stop looking at your competition. People are always looking at their competition. They go to trade shows, they're looking at their competition. They read magazines, they're looking at their competition. What he said was, if you want to get a new idea, you have to leave your box. You have to go climb into some other box of an industry that is completely unrelated to you and go steal from them.
Welcome to Strategy in Action, where we reveal how industry leaders build real market gravity, the force that naturally attracts opportunities, partnerships, and profits. You get raw insights, proven frameworks, and strategies that actually move the needle in your business. Let's get started. How do you possibly stand out in this amazingly crowded world that we have today as a business owner? That's exactly what we're digging into today with Steve Miller. He is a phenomenal marketing mind wrapped in a pretty charming dude. And he's written, 11 books now, including what we're going to talk about today called Uncopyable. And that's the key. That's the key to business success, sure, but also whatever you want to achieve, you've got to grab attention. That's the hardest thing to do these days, right? And so many of us get trapped in this trap of better, right? We get trapped in this idea of how can I be better than the coach next to you or that business down the road, instead of how can I be the only choice? And by figuring that out, what's your own category? How do you become uncopyable? That is a differentiator among differentiators. And that's what we get into today. That's really where I start with clients I work with to go and create a show or start building their brand. I'm trying to pull that from them. A lot of folks have it. Oh, I did this, this, and this, or this is how I'm different. I haven't really expressed that yet. Well, let's make sure we express that. Let's name that aspect of what you do and make it so that it is your own. That's a proprietary process that you take somebody through. Those are some of the elements of becoming uncopyable. And Steve and I dig into this so much, and he gives these great examples, certainly in his books, but on this show too, of how to go about this and where to look for ideas and examples of this. And we had such a fun conversation, and so much so we're going to do a part 2 for sure, and so much to cover. Absolutely love this interview with Steve, and I know you will too. All right, folks, you may know him as Kelly's dad. You may know him as the Uncopyable gunslinger. You will definitely know him as Steve Miller. Steve, welcome to the show.
Jason Croft, you're no relation to Laura Croft, are you?
It's an old relationship. She's an ex.
But you got kind of that Hollywood hair, you know.
Oh yeah. Awesome. Well, been connected on LinkedIn for a little bit. I jumped in and listened to, because I'm an audiobook guy, Uncopyable. Fantastic. I love certainly the core concept, which is easy for someone to grab, agree with, but then to go through it and see how they can actually do such a thing, how to become uncopyable. I knew that was the core topic I wanted to really dig into with you, since that is your absolute
it's the word. It's the word.
Zone of genius. Yes, absolutely. So a lot of our folks are coaches, consultants, certainly a broader base of business owners in general. But I really, bring these episodes around coaches, consultants. Usually they're on their own in business. And
they're you and me. They're you and me. That's what they are. Been there. We've built our businesses. We've built, we've gone through the stuff, to get there, and we have both, created our own paths and found special things along the way that help people.
Yeah.
Because I want to, I appreciate you still want to, I guess introduce me, but I just want to say right up front, I love market gravity. I
Oh,
just
thank you.
love that, and I might steal it, but I don't know what I'll do with it, but no,
Nice.
I just love it. I love that concept. I love the way it's explained and stuff. Maybe I can plus it a little bit.
Appreciate. Yeah, I would love to. Let's get there for sure. I want to make sure people have full context of you and why you're on. Certainly, they've had a little bit, in the intro that they'll have listened to already. But
Okay,
author of 11 books, you've been doing this for big
long time.
brands
Yeah, long time.
and everything. Yeah, and it's such an important thing. Like I mentioned when talking about the book, it's a simple concept. Hey, become uncopyable.
Hmm.
But then when you sit down and go, yeah, how do I do that? How do I make myself not sound like every other coach or deliver like every other consultant? That's a process.
Solid point.
That's a
Solid point.
piece.
Yeah, harder than you think it might be.
Yes, but it is more critical now than ever because it is noisier now than ever. There are no matter what you do, there's more of them now than ever before, and people talking loudly. So let's dig into this. Certainly, we can touch a little bit on why that's important in the original thesis, but then let's get into some of this how around it.
It's a really simple reason why. People do not buy from you because you are similar to the competition. It's that simple. You see, if you and being similar to the competition, you could also just say that they don't necessarily buy from you because you're even better than the competition. Better better is a word that really doesn't mean much. If your prospects, your target market that we call moose, we call them they're the moose in the you're hunting moose in the forest is what you're doing. That's where this whole thing came from for us. Is that you're a hunter in the forest and you're hunting moose. You're not hunting bear, you're not hunting raccoons, you're not hunting deer, you're hunting moose. And that is the only thing you're hunting and you're paying and that's all you're paying attention to. And so when we say you're hunting moose, your moose are looking at you, and if they look at you and they go, "Oh, you know what? You're kind of like those guys, or those guys, or those guys," um, then that's it. That makes it a difficult sell because ultimately, if they think that you are similar to the competition in some way, and they don't have any other choices, then it gets down. All it gets down to is price. And I learned many, many years ago, I hate competing on price. I want a lot of money. No, I mean, I want to give high. I have a phrase I'm very well known for, and that is where value is clear, the decision is easy. And that's the whole point of that is that you want to be creating a value that your moose they get it. They get that you are offering a value that they can't get anywhere else. And so the key word is that you can't be similar to the competition. You can't be just better than the competition. You have to be different than the competition in a unique, relevant, useful way.
And there's layers to that too, because you can have all of this value. You can sit down in your room by yourself and you can line out your big, amazing offer that gives so much value for the money, all of that. But you'll never get to put that in front of your moose if you're not seen as different, as why should I even listen?
Yeah. Yeah, and that and so I mean, I can I'm glad we can do this because I can jump right into kind of your market gravity uh, um, definition because you have five parts to your market gravity definition, which is the first part is visibility, which I could argue at a little bit that awareness. I have never cashed a check on awareness. I look at it like, okay, visibility is important, but it's a real short-term important thing. You have to you have to be going to that next step, which you do by sticking in authority as the as okay, you become visible to them, but then you now establish authority. That you're the smart guy, right? You're the one who's going to deliver something that nobody else can deliver. That's the authority part. And then the idea of resonance, where you're making a connection with your marketplace. Very, very important. Okay. And then you develop a momentum. You want to build a momentum in your marketplace. Okay. And then ultimately, it's kind of like it's inevitable that they have to choose you. Okay. The one word that I'm going to add to this is they have to remember you. See,
That's good.
for just a couple of years, I was a stuntman in Hollywood. And
As one does, right?
it's part of being one of us, in this world. In order to
You
get to where
graduate
we are,
college, you become
you
a
got to go through
stuntman.
you got to go through Hollywood and do a little bit of stunt work. Okay. And I remember one time having a conversation with an executive producer, and he was hiring me for a movie. And I was saying, "Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it." I said, everybody always says, it's who you know. And I said, "I'm so glad that I know you, and you've chosen me and stuff like that." And he says, "Steve, let me stop you right there." He says, "That phrase is completely wrong." He says, "It's not who you know." He says, "It's who knows you." He said, "I know you, Steve." He said, "So when I am doing a new movie or a TV show or something like that, and I'm looking at, okay, what type of stunts do we need? What type, do I think of you?" Right? And an old friend of mine, Nito Cobain, I don't know if you know who Nito is. He's president of High Point University. Um, uh, Really smart guy and stuff. I heard him speaking one time many years ago, and I heard him say, when the lightning bolt comes out of the sky, strikes the moose on the head, and the moose says, "I need this help." Do they think of you first? Do they think of you second? Do they think of you at all? And what that executive producer was saying to me was, no, you are the only one they think about. Okay. That goes back to, what's his name? Grateful Dead. Um, I'm blanking on his name. What's his name? Grateful
Jerry
Dead.
Garcia.
Jerry Garcia. Because Jerry Garcia says, you don't want to be the best. You want to be the only. That's what being uncopyable is all about. That's and I stumbled into the word uncopyable after several years of trying to teach to be the only. And all of a sudden that word popped into my mind. I said, "Oh, you want to be uncopyable. That's what you want to be."
And that can come in so many different ways, but mostly I think it's about creating your own thing. What's your own version? And it's a tricky spot because we hear the bad versions of this. Hey, what do you do? Well, I bring about and evolve the synergies of the executive's mindset in a way that, and you're just like, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, right? And so there's clear, which that is not. And
Right.
if you go the other way, like for me, like what do you do? Video podcast. Cool. I know a million people like you. See ya. Great. So that's the challenge in all this. This simple concept, that's the challenge in the middle to have enough context for somebody to go, "Oh, that sounds really familiar, but I've never heard it like that." How do you get there with some of this stuff and balance those two things?
Well, first of all, the number one thing is who's your moose. That's the number one thing. I mean, we always, we have a thing we teach people called the marketing diamond. It's just marketing 101. Okay. It's the 4 parts of marketing that you go through in order to communicate with your audience. Okay. And the first thing, number 1, is who is your market? It is much better to be a big fish in a small but rich pond, than it is to try to be a competent fish in a big a big lake. My wife and I, we built our business that, and I'm happy to say, well into 8 figures, and our initial list was 200 companies. And we built and we killed it in that list. I mean, we ended up having like 80% penetration with that list of who became clients of ours, because it was a very unique list. But we became very well known to these people. We were doing content. Understand, I'm an old guy. Okay, I've been, our business is, we've had our business now for 39 years. And I had no money. I was dead solid broke when I convinced Kay to marry me. And I always say, hey, well, it's just because she had a job, she had money, and so I found her, talked her into it, and within 3 years after we got married, she left this great job that she had to have a kid, and so then it was up to me to make this thing work. And so I discovered this concept of being a big fish in a small but rich pond, and I was able to identify a smaller audience, and anybody can do that. It's market guys like us, marketing guys like us. We talk about you niche down, you niche down, you niche down. Because if you can, the keys to finding the right niche are number 1, can you find them? Can you find the group? Can you find the moose? Can you find the forest where the moose are hanging out? So in other words, is it online? Is it in a social media? Is it in a Reddit group? Is it where is this group that you're trying to find? And do they have money? Do they have money that they are they are willing to spend? Do they talk to each other? In other words, do they refer to each other? And stuff like that. These things are all part of finding that right audience. Don't mess around with an audience that you can't communicate with efficiently, effectively. That doesn't have money, that they don't talk to each other. I mean, it's that you're really going to be spreading yourself thin if you try to do something bigger than that. Don't you
Oh
think?
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah, big time.
again,
And
that's that market gravity. Yeah, your market gravity, and you talk about and I love the word inevitable. You take people who are, what was it you said? You said I'm trying to remember what I read you say. You said you take people who are invisible and you turn them into being inevitable.
yeah, kind of that unseen expert into that inevitable
That's the
choice.
phrase
Yeah,
I'm referring to. The unseen expert into the inevitable choice, right? That I love that. I love that.
yeah. Well,
That's
thank you.
such a great way of putting it.
And I love that because I think that remembrance goes right after resonance and before momentum. That's going to create that, because that momentum comes when somebody does remember you and recommends you to that next person, and then they're back in it, and you're in that. You start to get a flywheel going, and
Yeah,
the moose
yeah.
that talk to each other, like you said. I do want to finish your thought on those 200 companies. What were you doing originally to get in front of them and speak to them?
I had been a vice president of sales and marketing for a Japanese toy company. After I got out of Hollywood, that's so stupid. I'm sorry. It's funny to me that I was doing that. But when I left Hollywood, I kind of got into sales and got this job with this toy company. found out I was good at it, and kind of climbed the ladder. It was the world's largest manufacturer of radio control toys, and didn't mean it was that doesn't mean very much because it was only about $50 million company, but it was the world's largest. And but I worked my way up into that up there, and while I was there, I exhibited at trade shows. Okay, anybody who's in business, if they're going to be at a trade show, whether as an exhibitor or an attendee, and my company they were the exhibitors, and I would go to those trade shows and I would watch. I had no experience, but I would walk around and I would watch other exhibitors, and I realized these guys suck. They are terrible. They here's a trade show, got people walking around who are moose, right? And the exhibitors are just sitting around talking, doing nothing.
Yeah, hoping someone comes by, right? It's still like that today.
It's still like that. I'm absolutely blown away by it, but it's still like that.
It's insane.
And so I was at a trade show in New York City. I was at the Premium Incentive Trade Show in New York City, which is actually a real interesting show, because imagine like your company wants to give gifts to your customers, and you're going like, okay, what kind of gifts do we give people, right? Well, you go to the Premium Incentive Show because the premiums, that they have, the pens and tchotchkes and stuff like that, they're giving away, those are premiums. Incentives are the cool stuff, the really nice stuff that they want to give to people. Well, that's all at the Premium Incentive Show. So it's a menagerie of stuff, right? And here, I'm saying, buy our radio control toys. They would people would love them, right? And what I did was, when I went to these shows, I said, hey, we're here to generate business. Now, not necessarily write sales, write orders at the show, but we are definitely here to gather leads of high quality moose that we will follow up with after the show, and we will make sales with after the show. Okay. Well, we're at the New York Premium Incentives show one time. Little booth. We got a little tiny booth. And across the aisle from us is this giant booth, 5,000 square foot booth, Apple computer. And at the end of the show, a guy walks up to me and he says, "Are you the guy who's running this booth?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, I'm the trade show manager for Apple." He says, "You've been kicking our ass for the last 4 days." And he said, "I'd like to hire you to come and teach me how to do that." And so I started moonlighting.
What were you doing differently?
Well, there's a couple of things. Number one is act like you want to be there. I mean, it's the people walking down the aisles, they are looking to give their money to you, right? The vast majority of trade show exhibitors, the way they learned how to do trade shows is they watch each other. And most of the people nowadays, see, trade shows back in the years ago, 50 years ago, they were 100 years ago, they were sales ready, because they were the efficient marketplace. Before TV, before I mean, like I say, even before TV, there was no efficient marketplace. You had to get on a train to go somewhere to visit somebody if you wanted to sell them something, or an airplane, or a car, or something like that if you wanted to go sell them something. But there was no one place where all the buyers, all the sellers could get together. That's how trade shows got started. Okay, and in the beginning, they were order writing shows. Then, as more and more things started the more and more tools went out for people to be able to communicate with, and use in communications, the importance of writing the order at the trade shows went down. But and so people started looking at them as mainly awareness builders, brand awareness builders. Okay. And their definition of success was if I had a crowded booth, or if I gave away 5,000 pens, I must have had a good show. That's the dumbest. That's stupid, right? And I said, no, we're gonna go find our moose. We're gonna find. We're going to set up a conversation with them after the show, and then we're going to sell them. Okay, and that's why Apple came, because they saw that I wasn't just having a crowded booth handing out crap like they were. I was actually, we were having conversations with people. We were taking notes, and we were getting people's information. And he saw that that's what we were doing. So, so the point being that the vast majority of companies, even today, just don't do that. And so I started to learn more about. I thought, hey, trade shows. What else can I do? Oh, I know what else I could do. I could contact these moose ahead of time and get them to come and see us at the show. Right? I could do that. I mean, it was all kinds of stuff. And I don't have it here with me right now, Jason, but I ended up writing a book called "How to Get the Most Out of Trade Shows." I wrote it back in 1990. It was a smash hit, bestseller in the trade, and people still tell me that it's still the number one selling book. And it's old. Okay, this is before internet. Now you go on. I mean, it's still for sale on Amazon. You go and now the reviews are going, oh, that thing is old. Well, hell, well, no kidding, Sherlock. It says 1990. And stuff. But the point being, that's what started the whole thing. Was when Apple reached out and said, "Hey, come and do this." Okay, and then and Apple introduced us to a company called Aldus, Aldus Computer. Today they're called Adobe. And they introduced us to several others. Well, next thing I know, I'm making more money on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays than I was during the week. And so I quit, came up with the idea of the book, wrote the book, boom, it just exploded. And and then it went from just trade shows to, well, it's all marketing. It's being a smart marketer.
Well, in finding these two, I think the two major concepts that I want to make sure we hit for folks that stood out to me were certainly the idea of getting out of your industry, taking these core ideas from, hey, what's makes this company in this completely different
bringing
industry.
in something that is a really important concept. Stop looking at your competition. And I'm impressed that you saw that. Thank you very much that means that you did your homework. And I appreciate that. Means a lot to me. Thank you very much. One of the big stepping stones in my life was that my dad was the co-inventor of the 8-track tape player. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, just Google it.
Go Google it.
Go Google
it's fantastic
it.
technology.
It changed the music industry.
Yeah.
It literally changed the music industry, because it was the first time people could carry music with them. Their choice of music. They could choose what they wanted to listen to, and they could carry it with them. That was what the 8-track did. And when they were building the 8-track, my dad and his co-partner, Bill Lear of Learjet, they didn't have enough money to produce the product in the United States. It was so expensive for labor and stuff like that. And they ultimately, because of my dad's background, my dad had a international background, they ultimately decided to build the product in Japan. Now, this is back in the early 1960s, and made in Japan back in the early 60s. Made in Japan was junk at that time. But there was a guy whose name was Edwards Deming, W. Edwards Deming, who is famous now because he's the guy who made Toyota what it is. And his whole thing was was total quality management. All right, but one of the most important parts of that, which became a cornerstone for me years later, was a thing he called benchmarking. And he would say, okay, in benchmarking, you are studying another company and you are taking what you consider to be their best practices, and then you are emulating it in your own context. He said there were two types of benchmarking. And this is where most companies, even today, screw up. But this ties exactly into what you just said, Jason. That is intrinsic benchmarking is the most common. People are always looking at their competition. They go to trade shows, they're looking at their competition. They read magazines, they're looking at their competition. They go to conferences, they're looking at their competition. Yeah, everything that they do every day is around the box that they're in. The box. That's the famous box everybody talks about. You're in that box with everybody else in your industry is in that box. And so you're all just looking at each other in that box. Okay. And if somebody comes up with a new idea in that box, how long does it take before somebody else says, hey, I could do that too? Only better. Right? I mean, that's what happens. It's like processionary caterpillars, the old, that they're just staring at each other in the box. Deming said that's intrinsic benchmarking. He said that's important if you want to know how you are doing compared to the competition. You just want to see what is your status right now compared to everybody else, right? But if you want to come up with a new idea, you have to. And he didn't say get out of the box. He called it extrinsic benchmarking. And what he said was, if you want to get a new idea, you have to leave your box. You have to go climb into some other box of an industry that is completely unrelated to you and go steal from them. The example most people love to hear the most about is when I was consulting for Caterpillar. They wanted to teach their the drivers, the users, and stuff like that Caterpillar was better than all the rest, and they could help them and all this sort of stuff. And they did all the usual stuff. So they hired me to kind of start working with them, and I said, okay, they were based outside of Chicago. They are based outside of Chicago. And I said, all right, I'm going to take you for a field trip. So I loaded everybody up on a bus, and we drove downtown into Chicago, and I stopped, and I took them all in, and I took them in, all of them kicking and screaming, into the American Girl store. And I said, guys, you got to go in there, and this has nothing to do with Caterpillar. This is only about customers. What is American Girl doing to make the customer experience different? What is American Girl doing that makes customers want to give them all their money? Now, and they did. They went in kicking and screaming. There were some of these men who said they were not going into the American Girl store. Okay. I said, well, then you're going to be sitting out here in the bus for 4 hours, or for however long we're going to be here, right? 4 hours later, I had to drag them out. They were taking so many notes of what they could do at Caterpillar that would be different from every other John Deere, name the other ones, right? They knew it was going to be different, all right? And so they took that and they did lots of stuff, including their visitor center that they have now. And that's the thing. See, Deming said the vast majority of American companies are so focused on intrinsic benchmarking they don't pay attention to the extrinsic part. And so that was, and that's where that's where my thing came from. My thing came, where when I started working with companies, it was, how do we go find new ideas? And the thing is, the ideas are everywhere. They're just not in your box, right? You have to go find another box. Like
Oh, yeah.
that's what you were alluding to when you talked about that.
And that's a beautiful thing too, because it opens up the world too when you can focus that way and you can think that way and you have a little guidance, and it's a muscle like anything else. You start looking at the world that way and everything changes, and it's just, whoa, it becomes fantastic. I we've got to wrap. I could talk to you about this, and I want to hear 50 more stories, honestly, from
Yeah, well, I mean,
these like this.
if I can talk you into doing another one of these episodes, we can talk about how to be remembered. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
number
I would
one,
love
we
that.
can talk about the extrinsic benchmarking, and then we could talk about that other stuff. That's if you're interested.
I would love to. I would love to get into that. I want to get into making your customers rock stars. I love that
Yes. Oh my
aspect. And
gosh, is that thing powerful? Wow.
yeah. So, all right. Well, that settles it. We'll have to kick in a part 2 here. But before we go, I know you've got stuff for the audience you've been kind enough to put together.
Well, yeah, I just want to, if somebody wants to, learn a little more about us, or get some ideas or something like that. God, she's going to be mad at me when I say this. My smoking hot wife, Kay, she put together a 25 uncopyable action steps. It's a list of things that you can do that will separate you from the competition. And you can go in and you can see if there's any of them that you're already doing, or you can see things that you can steal for yourself. And and so you can get this action step list. If you go, our website is beuncopyable.com. The page to go get this is beuncopyable.com/Jason-Croft. I should have just made it just Jason Croft. That's what I should have. That would have been easier.
That's it. Make him work for it.
I really am a fan of Jason and his philosophy with this stuff, and he does more podcasts than anybody I've ever seen in my life. I mean, he has more interviews.
Not good, but there's a lot of them.
You got way too much time on your hand, my friend.
Quantity over quality, my friend. That's what I go for. Steve, thank you so much for this. Honestly, I really would like to do a part 2 because I could keep this going. Love talking this stuff with you. Really enjoyed your book. I'm a little bit angry because I'm going to have to go through now at least the other 3 that are in that series.
Stealing Genius is I'm going to tell you right now, Stealing Genius is the best book there, and it's the lowest selling book. So.
Oh, wow. All right. It's next on the list. Steve, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for joining us on Strategy in Action. Remember, true industry leaders don't chase opportunities, they attract them. Want to build your own market gravity? Visit MediaLeadsCo.com. See you next time.